Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to everybody that's in the chat box and to our Zoom. Today is October 21st. I'm Dr. Dina Churchill, innovator in women's health and wellness, and I'm here representing the Atlantic Common Law Assembly with Kevin Annett today. So we're talking about taxes and how and why not to pay taxes to the government. This would be kind of the focus of the day, but we'll kind of jump out to a broader paradigm. If you do have any questions, we'd ask you to sort of hold them till we're halfway through, and we'll check the chat box and bring your questions back into our interview and our recording. But thank you all for being here, because it's really your questions and your comments that helps develop the program. So let me tell you a little bit about me first. If you don't know, I was a chiropractor for 22 years. My license was suspended, and subsequently I retired early, fined for speaking about vaccine dangers, so injuries that I'd seen in my practice. Spent 2 years kind of wrestling with MLAs and governments, trying to sort of share the information no one wanted to hear. So because of that pain in the old system, I sort of moved into researching common law and looking for a solution, really, and creating a new paradigm. And myself and another man, started kind of our own little cell here in Halifax, and then quickly, in a matter of a couple of weeks, grew to include all of Atlantic Canada. So we have Newfoundland and PEI and New Brunswick and Nova Scotia as part of this kind of umbrella association, or let's say assembly. And we've been just growing and using this kind of as our learning platform. So we welcome those who are visiting from the UK, from the US, from all over Canada. I think together we're stronger. Now, Kevin Annett needs no introduction, but this is really a man that knows common law, and you can see that by his actions. He's a nominee for Peace Prize. He's Nobel Peace Prize nominee, recipient of the Prague Peace Award, community minister, human rights consultant, special advisor to the International Tribunal Against Crimes of Church and State. He's award filmmaker, lecturer, broadcaster, author. He has a degree in anthropology, a master's in divinity, a master's in political science. So he's a perfect guy to bring together God, man, and the land. Really done many different things, but I guess what's most notable is his work, murderbydecree.com, in this book, where he organized the first public inquiry against crimes of residential schools in Vancouver in '98, and then was a chief advisor to the International Common Law Court of Justice in Brussels in 2 cases against the Vatican, Crown of England, and its churches. So he forced the resignation of Pope Benedict and a few others, sex-offending pedophile friends, in the Vatican in 2013. So this was from Kevin's book that we found really valuable here in the Atlantic Assembly. Just going to admit a few more people here at helping us organize. And Kevin, we're so grateful because you were instrumental really in helping us to gather some of the other common law people who are, imitating common law principles, aren't really focused on assemblies, but we really see the value in coming together as a unit and differentiating and bringing our resources together. So thank you for that.
Dana, thank you, and thanks for everybody to be on right now. It's a real honor to be with all of you and so many newcomers. It's a sign that not only we're being successful, but that the sign of the times, that many people are waking up now to self-governance and that. I think, the whole issue of income tax, I do want to put it in a broader context, because historically it's a new idea. The idea that income can be taxed by the government is something that people, at least in America, countries with a republic, a tradition of a republic, it's like they were as much against the idea of income tax as they were against standing armies. Originally, the idea is that the local people gathered in assembly would find a way to not only protect themselves but survive economically. There'd be a notion of local self-sufficiency, and taxation is one aspect of the whole question of how do people survive in an economy like this, where increasing centralization, increasing bureaucratization, and various people are approaching this in a fairly narrow way. And I want to put this in a bigger context all the time. The bigger question of, within a common law republic, how do we achieve economic self-sufficiency and self-reliance in the community. There'd be different models talked about, but the thing about taxation, it's about how do we keep the money in the community? That's kind of bottom line. And, so I want to kind of address that as well as specific questions people have about, the taxation itself, income tax. The kind of general point about taxation is in America, there was a constitutional amendment brought in allowing income tax, right? In Canada, there is no such law because it's an act of parliament. The Income Tax Act is an act of parliament, but everything in Canada is subject to what's called the pleasure of the crown. And that means the bottom line is if the Governor General in council or within what's called the Privy Council, if he decides something isn't valid anymore, then it isn't. The bottom line is that, and this is reflected in the fact that about 3/4 of the laws passed in Canada are never even debated in Parliament. You can tell because in front of the law, they'll say PC, which means Privy Council. So a bunch of cronies and bureaucrats get together and pass a law, and then it becomes the law. And that's been the case whether it's about the Indian Act, genocidal acts, the COVID measures, the War Measures Act in 1970, or Income Tax Act. It was all brought in order in council without any input from people, without any accountability. And so that in itself makes it bogus. Another thing is you mentioned the murder by decree, our whole revelation of genocide in Canada. Well, that fact alone right there, you don't even have to go beyond that to say to people that's why you cannot pay income tax in Canada, because Canada and the Crown are convicted criminal regimes under international law. And under the International Criminal Court Convention in 1998 that established really the first body to adjudicate crimes of genocide by whole states, it says right there that citizens are obligated not to pay taxes to a convicted criminal regime. If your own government is committing war crimes and crimes against humanity, you cannot pay taxes to it, or you're an accessory to a crime. That's reason enough right there for Canadians not to pay income tax, because, and Canada Revenues knows it because some of our people out on the West Coast have written to them and said, show me how my tax money is going to not be used to conceal genocide in Canada. And they have never gotten an answer back. Now, that means that they don't want to address the issue. They may know it's true. Last year, Justin Trudeau admitted that genocide occurred in Canada in June of 2019. At that point, he should have been arrested and put before a war crimes tribunal. There should have been criminal charges laid, because under the Genocide Convention, if a country admits to genocide, they must then be prosecuted and punished. That's the word, prosecuted and punished, either by other nations or by their own citizens. Well, that's in effect what we're doing. We're prosecuting and punishing Canada by establishing a new jurisdiction, by saying it's only within a different jurisdiction that you can put on Canada and Trudeau and others on trial for war crimes, because the Crown Courts aren't going to do it. We tried that for 20 years, and they continually refused. So that's the kind of the context for the whole discussion of income tax, that in a way it's kind of like talking about rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic to talk about, issues of income tax, because the whole ship is going down. The whole ship is illegitimate. We have to start keeping the money locally, legally, morally, politically, for all those reasons. Personally, it's all justified to simply not pay federal taxes, especially since that money is used to pay, primarily, the federal taxes are paid, used to pay debts to banks, offshore banks. It's not funding essential services, hospitals, highways, all of that stuff comes out of provincial and municipal taxes normally. So we go to the mayors, we go to city councilors, we say, look, stop paying federal taxes, stop individuals from paying income tax, keep the money locally. We can set up a local trust fund administered through the Common Law Assembly, in which people can put their income tax money. So that money is then used to fund, the local economy, whatever we want to do, just to make sure that people are surviving. That's kind of my general take on income tax. There's other aspects we can get into depending on people's questions. somebody says, is it that simple? Well, yeah, it is that simple. We just say no to, you know, something that's fraudulent in the first place, illegal under international law, and morally justified in terms of the situation we're in now.
Well, and I would say, I mean, it's not just your experience has been in the, residential schools and the genocide, but even right now, our taxes are paying for these vaccines, right? Our taxes
Right.
are paying for the poisons to put in our kids. Our taxes is paying Dr. Robert Strang, our chief medical advisor here, to order. Our taxes paid for those 500,000 flu shots that they just bought for Nova Scotia. So we're actually funding our own suffering, not just the way of genociding our kids, but in the poisons that they're putting into us.
Yep, exactly right. And you're not obliged to do anything, to fund anything that's going to harm you. That's, again, reason enough not to do it. There's multiple reasons not to do it.
So I had talked to another common law derivative and that person had said that there was 20% that goes to the London, 20% of our taxes, and 40% went to, or 60% that went to the Vatican. So how could a person know that split of our taxes? Is there a way that we could, how would he know that?
Well, the first fact is that the Vatican Bank, it's called the IOR, which is Italian for Institute of Religious Works, which is kind of funny to say it's going towards religious works when you look at how they use their money. But there's no way you can know in the first place. It's a closed society. It's a secret society. It's never audited. You can't know who its directors are. There's no way you can know what percentage the Vatican Bank is getting. There's only one thing that's being made public about that, and that's called a financial concordat. A concordat is a special treaty between the Vatican and governments. They like to pretend they're a government. They're not under international law, but they call themselves a government. Somebody's called them a Santa Claus state, where we pretend they're a state, so as not to upset the children. But the point is, they're not. But they have nevertheless these concordats, whereby there's over 100 countries in the world, including Canada, whereby we estimate between 3 and 5% of total tax revenue is funded into the Vatican Bank. That's one of the ways it happens. Another way it happens is a lot of the banks in the world, and there's a woman, Dr. Catherine Horton in Switzerland, she's made a lifelong study of this. And, we can send out links about this, but the 10 major banks in the world channel their revenue into two banks, the Vatican Bank and what's called the Bank for International Settlement, the BIS in Geneva. And they both operate according to what's called extraterritorial jurisdiction, which means they're outside all jurisdictions. And so when you count it out, it's a huge amount, if that's accurate. Now, again, you're dealing with secret societies, so you can't really know, right, except indirectly. And so that's, in terms of the Vatican Bank and the Crown of England, and that we can surmise a lot, but the hard evidence, really, it's hard to find because of the way they operate, right?
We just had a comment that I noticed kind of fits in here now. We have kind of a testimony from Iron Crow saying he's been CRA in default and they can't even contact him now. He's been that way for 9 years. So maybe you could talk a little bit about just the practicality of it. So we just refuse to pay taxes to CRA, and what repercussions can we expect from that?
I would recommend that individuals not do it on a one-on-one basis. This is the problem. If you take on the system as an individual, they love that because they then target you, use you as an example, and scare people off by whacking you really hard. I had a friend of mine, Andrew Patterson, who did that in Victoria. He didn't even refuse to pay taxes. He just asked them that question: is my tax money going to be used to conceal genocide in Canada? Because if so, it's against the law. They demanded he paid. When he wouldn't, they put a lien on his bank account. They went to all of his customers and said he's out of business. They did everything possible to destroy his life because they wanted to make an example of him. So what we say is, you don't take them on as an individual. What you do in your local assemblies, you pass a law, like we passed that law outlawing COVID measures. And you basically say income tax in Canada is illegal, it's fraudulent, And we as a community are keeping our tax money, including our income taxes, locally, and line up lots of support. See if the mayor, town council, police, see if you get a whole list of endorsers of this. And as a community, you say, we're keeping our money in the community. The income tax and that, in a republic, and this is in the Republic of Canada, it's in its policy outline that's being worked out so far, it says income tax is abolished. There's no need for income tax in the first place, because what should be taxed is not our income and what we make, but the total wealth in this community. Wikipedia did a study 3 years ago, and they found if you take all the wealth produced in Canada every year and divided it equally, everyone would get paid $248,000. That's the amount of wealth being sucked out of this country. So there's no need for poverty. There's no need for income taxes at all. You just tax the existing wealth. And for example, wealth created by speculation or by offshore interest. You ban foreign ownership of the economy, you keep the money here, and you don't need income tax. So that's why we don't even advocate reform in the income tax act. We just say don't pay it, but instead have a community response, so that we are saying we are keeping our taxes locally, and you have the backing of a community. It's like you don't go up against a cop, you get your sheriffs and you get support there, instead of trying to take them on individually. Same thing with economic and taxation issues.
So does the National Council have any aspirations of doing that something, more globally that we can just then support as individual assemblies?
Yes, they've actually, the National Council of the Republic has set up an economic commission, and they were going to send out a thing next week about it, but I might as well talk about it. That economic commission will look into all aspects of, a really important question, which is how we survive in a new society, right? What's the economic foundation of what we're doing? What's our vision? And part of that will be the whole issue of tax and local self-reliance, economic self-reliance, setting up alternative models to get outside the market kind of moneyed economy, like local exchange and trading networks, local currency. People who have thought about a lot of this stuff are going to work on this commission. And if anybody wants to volunteer for that, including and especially people in the Indigenous communities who have their own kind of perspective on that in their own territories, we want to bring all those people together and start hashing these things out. So that's another thing that'll be happening.
And I think that served us well, to have the council administer those laws, right? The COVID, outline COVID restrictions, and
Yeah.
then it's a Canada-wide movement. So the bigger we are, again, the more impact we have. So
Exactly.
if every assembly can adopt the same law at the same time, I think it's it gives us unity too. We just
That's
had
right.
a question here, and if I could just remind you to keep your video off and your mic muted, that would be great, because we are recording. And we just had a question here from Chris. Can we request our employer to stop deducting taxes from our pay?
Yes, you can do that in the law in Canada. Just say you're going to handle it, and then don't pay.
So what we'll do, we'll drip down into the chat box. So if you have any questions, so you can please put it in. So Lex, if you could turn off your video, that would be great. And Paul, that would be awesome. Thank you. I just wanted to read out one of the kind of many emails. I won't read out the exact email, but maybe my reply to it. But, many people kind of come into assemblies, and I'm sure other secretaries and conveners and administrators will feel the same thing. And they'll say, I don't have time to read the information. I don't have time to look at your website or the PDFs you sent, but can you tell me why I should join? And, that right away kind of sparks, an air of concern, because again, it's like a person that's looking to be taken care of. So as I had talked to Kevin earlier, I just sort of threw past my reply, to one of those emails, was that this is a process that takes time to learn, and we're creating a new nation, Canada, a new system of governance, and it's never been done before. We're writing history right now. So, the Zooms or the PDFs or the information that we present, are really a part of helping you, that you don't need to let go of the medical system or your home or your job or your life right now. That can coexist. It's not mutually exclusive to, being a member in our assembly or being a citizen in Canada. But I think, this self-governance, it also teaches people to take responsibility for themselves. So right at the beginning, when we have new people coming on saying, I don't know if this is for me, convince me to join, I say, you know what, it's not for you. We're really sovereign minds and hearts that are gathering other sovereign minds and hearts to be part of this movement. So it's good to empower people, I think, right from the beginning, and let them know that there is a little bit of time and investment if they want to be part of this movement, because it's not for everybody. I think you have to have enough pain in the old system. You have to see the corruption, whether it's the genocide or whether it's the vaccines or whatever your pain has been. The pain actually fuels your purpose forward and gives you kind of the enthusiasm and the fuel to help form a new nation. So our coordinator, Linda, had suggested this brilliant question as a way for new people coming on. How has the old system trespassed against you? Because right away you can see where that person's level of understanding is and what their experience has been. Because somebody who doesn't really believe in the genocide of Canada or the history of, the government taking Indigenous people out of their homes and vaccinating the kids, likely are not going to believe the situation now. So I think it's important to set up the paradigm of knowing where people come from and then letting them know that it's their investment that they have to put. It's their decision whether or not to join. I'm not there to convince them. So I just thought that might help our administrator, because we're going through some growing pains of knowing kind of what position people want to take, and our education coordinator had suggested that. So I thought it was a good thing to share with everyone. Do you have any comments on that, Kevin?
No, I agree wholeheartedly that, this is a sifting out process, and all we have to do is think of where we're at a few years ago or 20 years ago or whatever, and we realize we all evolve. We all learn from our own experience, and yet at the same time, those who have gone quite a ways to understanding something can't be held back by those who need to go through that stage themselves. So there's categories of involvement, right? And I often say we've got to find the veterans and the people who are clearest and most brave and determined, and organize them as a leadership, and not be kind of diffused among the need for going down to the lowest common denominator, to put it crudely, right? Which we need to bring people up rather than bring them down, if that makes sense, right?
And that empowers them to ask them to do a little, bit of work on their own. So the email that I'd sent out, if anybody's looking for it, you can connect with us. But we sent out an Unmask package that we put together. So this was something that, we approached the schools with, and it had the, the outline, the laws from the National Council, and also just a 16-page document of medical research, really, that shows the dangers in mask wearing, Canada citizenship card, and again, the You Are the Republic guide of why you'd want to be a citizen in the Republic, and what the responsibility is for you. So thank you for sending that. That was brilliant. They're great tools, but again, you can give people the tools. What they do with it, then it's up to them. I said to our administrator tonight in an email, I said, we keep everybody on the list. We got to keep dripping on them and giving information, but not everyone's going to join. You have some people join and then they'll fall away. But I think the information is for everyone. Oh, here's a question, and this is Carolot, and this is the convener of the assembly in Edmonton, I believe. Is it Kevin?
For all of Alberta.
Alberta, all of Alberta. Okay. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
A group of us are meeting here, putting systems linking industries and individuals to be able to supply or procure more easily and fairly, like a new economy. Who on the National Common Law Council can you connect me with?
I'll talk, Carla, I'll talk to you offline about that. I'll give you a contact name.
But this is great, right? Because we can see now, we have kind of the inside scoop of what's happening out there in Edmonton, and we can just kind of share resources. So that's great. And then Kevin Wendell saying he's heard multiple sources that the communist Chinese troops have taken out several areas in Vancouver. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, for a fact, we know you can't get into Stanley Park. Police stop you from entering it. That's a few people have experienced that. There have been videoed recordings of Chinese troops training on Salt Spring Island and a couple of the other Gulf Islands, and also on the west coast of Vancouver Island. Also, it's known very widely that Prince Rupert, the superport there, is now heavily funded and controlled by the Chinese. which is kind of an entry point for their illegal migrants and the military to operate in that area. So yeah, it's very real.
And Chris says, is there any law in Canada requiring us to file an income tax with Revenue Canada?
Yes and no. There's the Income Tax Act, but it's a big question mark whether they have enforcement powers. Because if you just do a search and look up Income Tax Act, and a lot of the wording there is very vague. It's kind of like the COVID stuff. They can't enforce it because they know it's not a law. They require your willing compliance. And if you say no, they can't really do anything about it. And I think it's the same. There's a lot of ambiguity in that act. So I think it's because they know the Canada Revenue Agency is not a government agency. It's an offshore corporation that's siphoning the money out of the country. But they've got to surround that with a lot of fog and mirrors. So I would say no, you're not required. I see no enforcement power behind that act. But anyway, we're going to examine that more in detail.
I had a conversation with Rocco Galati, who's the constitutional lawyer representing Vaccine Choice Canada this afternoon. I was kind of late getting onto the call with the time zone mix-up and everything, but I had suggested that to him. In fact, I said, a portion of our taxes are being paid to, Rome and the Vatican, the pedophiles and the Queen who's drinking the blood of our kids. And I was a little embarrassed actually by my behavior in that call because I got really kind of upset. But I suggested that the way to really solve this whole issue is to defund, the system, and we're paying for our own suffering. So I really think, and he didn't argue with me. In fact, he said philosophically he agreed with me. So I don't think there's a legal issue with that, especially if the Crown is been charged with treason, and you don't want to support the pedophiles in the Vatican. Then I think we have choice of where money goes. So, and you had mentioned, so Rocco questioned me on this. So I said, I quoted you in the information you sent me, 3 to 5% of our taxes go to the Vatican. And he said, oh, I don't think that's true. I don't think you, and I said, well,
oh, yeah.
I'll give you that document.
It's the Financial Concordat Agreement.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll give you a website. There's a European website called concordatwatch.eu. And there it is. And that's the history of what the Vatican Concordats are. It just means treaty, but it's a financial treaty whereby money is subsidized directly to the Vatican. And of course, as taxpayers, you pick up the bill of the Catholic Church because they're, they don't pay taxes, so you do for them, and you fund them, even though they're a genocidal institution that routinely still traffics and kills children, and you're paying for it, which is against the law. So.
Well, and when I looked up, because I didn't know what the IOR meant, when I looked it up on Wikipedia, it's the Institute for Opera de Religion, right? Institute for Works of Religion. But it said, they're affirming the importance of the IOR because their vision is, for the good of the Catholic Church, the Holy See, and the Vatican State. And I thought, you know what? I don't really want to put my tax dollars supporting that. So again, that I think I'll have a look at your website and send that off to Rocco Galati. He's doing some great work with Vaccine Choice Canada, and he's just put a charge, I guess, against the Ontario government, the Canadian government, against these COVID restrictions, lockdown and masks and mandatory vaccines. So apparently they're just at the mask stage right now in the whole court case. But my question to him was, if the Queen is corrupt and all the lawyers, which are QC, Queen's Counsel, are underneath the Queen, how can they topple her and overturn what she's recommending? So he really didn't have a legal answer for that within his legal system. But I suggested that lawful was outside of legal, and that if the Queen says it's legal, it doesn't really make it lawful. So it was an interesting conversation. But
he's a member of the bar. It makes him what's called an officer of the court. So there's certain things he's not even allowed to talk about. I experienced that personally in one of the first times I was working with some residential school survivors. And they were talking about, in their court statement, they found bodies of children who had been killed on the grounds of the school, the Port Alberni school run by the United Church. This would be in the mid-60s. And they put it in their court statement because it's a factor in the traumatization they went through as a child. Their lawyer, Dave Patterson, removed it. And I said, why did you take that out of their court statement? And he said, I'm an officer of the court as well as their lawyer, and there's certain issues I'm not allowed to raise, which is the culpability of the Crown for criminal action. So every lawyer in Canada is sworn to do that, to protect the Crown first, right? And that applies in this case even more because it has to do with criminal culpability of the people who he's sworn an oath of allegiance to, right? So it's like, running in a maze. You never get out of it if you're in their system.
Well, and the whole Federal Reserve, right, set up as a private banking system, giving our governments money, right, charging them high interest rates so they can kind of set up their own corrupt laws. But I think I sent you that video called Wizard of Oz, that financial video. But there was a quote from Aristotle back in 325 BC, and he said money wasn't intended to be used in exchange, but to increase interest. And this term interest, which means the birth of money from money, is applied to the breeding of money. Not all modes of getting wealth, of all the modes of getting wealth, this is the most unnatural. So, the whole idea of charging us is kind of strange, but then charging us for our own pain and suffering, is a little more corrupt, right?
Chris, I noticed there's a question from Chris here about, do you want to read that, Dina?
Go ahead. How can we, as a new republic, financially interface with the Dominion of Canada, and do we need our own currency?
Good question. I wish I could answer it right now. I think that's a question that people should think about, and the Economic Commission should, definitely start looking at that. I mean, I don't want to give an answer now because it's my opinion, because that whole thing hasn't been talked about yet. But Chris, maybe, when we communicate, I'll put you in touch, as Carla is going to be in touch with the person on the council who's working on this stuff. I would think the short answer would be, we're going through a whole intermediate phase where we're coexisting with the existing system. So I would say, of course, we need our own currency. But anyway, I'm not an expert, so.
But I did say to Rocco that I was really love and honor the work that he's doing and the challenge, and he's really bringing out, these unlawful COVID measures to a wider circle, when they can see the government being challenged, even within their own system. So again, I have utmost respect for him for what he's doing. But
well,
at the same
Andrew,
time,
I don't think.
but
I'm sorry.
I can't follow it, right? Because I tried that.
Andrew,
it didn't work for me. So. But
sorry to interrupt, Dan. Andrew just said that my face should go on the Republic money. So I hope not as it is now. I hope a younger shot of me. So this is bald spot's a bit covered, but anyway.
I just had I wanted to share this. If there's any more questions, you can pop them in. But I had this vision because, there's a lot of tension out there, right? And I go out and I see all these people with masks, and I just kind of want to shake them and say, So this week I've had a few emails from people who have really kind of reached their peak, even last week, and, have kind of lost it and got mad. But, what helps me now is to imagine if the mask's a slingshot, and I kind of pull it back and then, hit them with the mask. But at the same time, it's like love, that penetrates their fear, goes into their pineal gland, into their heart, and it's going to change their perspective. So now when I see a person, I can kind of smile because I have that vision. But I think, the most important thing really right now for us, because they use it against us, right? I was called delusional. Andrew and Shannon had some issues, right, with the CPS and, just being challenged. Is really we have to, find our center and be professional, stand our ground, not bend to their authority, but at the same time kind of hold a professional stance, and don't let it get to us, because they'll drag you in to that, drama. And when you do, then they almost have you, right? They've caught your heart and your soul and your mind. So, and they can use that against you. So with all this happening, call a friend, remove yourself from the situation if you need to, however you need to. But I think it's really important for us right now, as we're being challenged from all sides, is to try to kind of hold that peaceful space and ground. Any other questions? Chat box. Kevin, do you have any comments?
No, I'm just commenting on advice about having somebody offer their hair for mine, but anyway.
Well, that's important to share.
Yeah.
It's funny.
I don't mind my baldness, actually.
So we've talked about, why we don't want to pay taxes, because we don't want to fund the corruption of the crown and the church. And you've seen that, Kevin, in all your work. And we've looked at how not to pay taxes, right? Just saying no, or have your employer not deduct it from your salary. Or again, to talk in your assemblies or in our national council about how we can create a law that, like we've done with outlying COVID measures, that can bring us together in unity and strength. And the benefits to the local community, we also mentioned. So you said, do you think it should be the assemblies that approach the mayors, or how can we kind of bring our communities on board with like keeping the money locally without, having them become members of the assembly? How would you?
We can be creative about this. We could put out a suggestion, maybe do a kind of door-to-door survey and just ask people, would you support an initiative by our assembly to recall all tax money into our community, keep tax money in the community, get people to start thinking about it, not as a statement we're doing this, but asking their involvement, asking their ideas about it. Raise it as a topic on the next town council meeting, wherever you are. Putting forward a motion based on everything that's been said that we can document very thoroughly, that, we propose that we start an initiative to keep the tax money locally and, go beyond that to talk about other things. But I mean, that would be a good thin edge or the wedge into the whole issue of, taking back our power, like in a real sense, not just an ideal, but yeah.
And what about a petition or something, having people sign a petition that we then bring to kind of city council to say, this is a real concern that, these small businesses are, we're losing small businesses, and we see the value in keeping them alive, especially after this big COVID lockdown.
Well, again, don't forget, our assemblies are the local governance. That's the point. And it would be almost not going to the town council for something, but saying, we are establishing this bylaw in our community. Would like you to take it up too. We invite them in. So again, it's that energetic thing, bringing them into our initiative all the time, right? And that would be the idea. So that's the trouble with the petition. You're asking someone, you're giving away your energy to that other body, and they can just ignore it, right? So.
Jack says, can they take your license away or put liens on your house if you don't pay taxes?
Yes, they could, if they want to make an example of you. But it's drawn out. When they did that to my friend Andrew, it took them about 2 years. And they had a lot of mud all over their face because Andrew used it as a chance to go to everyone and say, look at how dictatorial the government's being. I just asked them a question. I didn't even say I wasn't going to pay. I just asked them a question, and they came down on me like a ton of bricks. So it can blow back against them if they get too severe. And we got to think of ways of, using those situations. But, the short answer is, yeah, they can try anything, right? But I mean, is it going to help them to do that, right? More than it would help us.
And Mark says, how do we bypass filing taxes? If we don't file, they will lock up our bank accounts until they are filed and paid. I'm a self-employed business owner, so I need a bank account to pay bills and collect payments.
Could you say the first part? I didn't hear it. There was a little bit
How
of
do we
noise.
bypass filing taxes? If we don't file, they could lock us up or lock up our bank accounts until they are filed and paid. And he's a self-employed business owner.
Right.
So he needs a bank account in order to pay bills and collect payments.
There's ways of deferring taxes. First of all, I haven't paid in 25 years because I haven't had taxable income enough. They came at me once. I've been living at or below the poverty line, right? And so I have an advantage. I don't have a business or that, so I'm not in the same category. But those with businesses in that, there's ways of deferring that. And again, I'm not an income tax expert, so please don't quote me. But we're, as part of this economic commission, I know what they're doing is lining up people with the legal knowledge, including some lawyers who can provide that information to us about the ways you can defer taxes and avoid it. Also in grounds of conscience, there was a tax resistance movement in Victoria, BC, that it was run by Quakers, and they said, we don't want, our tax money going towards military hardware and all that stuff. And on religious and conscience grounds, you have traditionally been allowed exemptions. So there's a lot of avenues to explore, and I would just say to people, write to me and we can connect you with people who are working on that issue.
And thank you again for all your comments. Again, any questions or comments, if you could put them in caps just so they kind of stand out. How can we fund the grassroots operation of our local assembly and the Republic in general?
We got to be creative about that because, again, for a number of reasons, it's not good to use bank accounts these days because the government, with their new bail-in legislation, banks can seize your assets to cover their deficits now legally. I don't think they can do a checking, but definitely the savings accounts they can. So we have to, I would say, to fund your local work, it's good to just have a treasurer and, keep the money off the radar as much as possible. And there is on the website, republicofcanada.ca, there is a way to donate, through direct wire transfers and e-transfers and that. But again, we got to be creative in terms of that issue, because as long as you operate through their centralized system, they have access to it. So
any other questions? Great book, Step by Step, Businesses Taxing. Again, that's great. So Charlene says, so we need a law passed within the assembly or council, then we take this to them. I guess she means count the city council to show taxation is unlawful.
I'm going to do up, I've actually, knowing we're going to talk about this today, I asked somebody on the commission to write up a sample letter, a motion that we pass within the assembly, and then a letter based on that to the local town council. So I hope to get that out within the next couple of days. I'll send it to Dina and everybody else who has my email.
That's great. Thank you. Banks are currently, Paul says that the banks are currently taking inventory, and he estimates 3 to 6 months for them to implement. Yeah, I went to remove money from my bank on your recommendation, Kevin, and I had a call from the bank manager asking why I wanted to remove my money.
Of course. Yes. You don't have to tell them.
I don't have to tell you that. I think I set up the account. It's none of your business. No. So
well, somebody said, Diane or somebody said, keep it on a mattress. And it's funny because my great-great-grandfather, David Duncan McCourt, he was one of the richest men in Winnipeg. And being this Scotsman, he never used a bank. He did keep it literally in his basement in a mattress because he knew the system. He knew it was total larceny. So he kept it in his house. Right.
They're getting ready for a quantum financial system, says Diane. My tax-free savings has carried a balance of $5 throughout 7 years, and I've had that account open, says Chris. Well, I actually had a savings account, and I went, into negative because they kept taking money out of it. How do we get the people in heart consciousness to meld with the people in mind consciousness to unify our group? What a great question.
That's a big question.
I love that.
Good content for another discussion sometime. I would love to get into that in some detail.
I have a comment on it.
Yeah.
I think, what we've seen here, Brent, in our assembly is really just being there for each other. When Andrew and Shannon had problems with CPS, there was a group of us went to the house. There was some members that were having problems this week, and I got the call and I went there. We had a person who's not even a member on our assembly in Yarmouth who's on the call right now, a young mother, and was having kind of a meeting with the school board, and Anastasia and Linda and Karen and myself drove, I drove 5 hours, and I think Karen drove 7 to get to this mother to have this meeting. I think that's the heart-centeredness. We can have the knowledge, but if we don't put it into heart-centered practice where you really love and care for the people around you, then it goes nowhere. So in building the assembly for us, it's building that love and trust within our group. So yes. I don't know, that's how.
Perfectly said. There's no substitute for compassion. Somebody asked, do we need dues and memberships to support the work? Absolutely. You should, in an assembly or a group, set up a due structure right away. That way you have the means. So it isn't all coming out of one person's pocket, which tends to happen from the most committed people, right? So share the load.
Well, I just, I put out some financial outlay at the beginning for different things, and members have sent money to me. So Karen took up a collection at our gathering. Another member, Vaughn, just sent money this week. Wendell took me out to dinner. So I think it all comes back. The amount of investment that you put in, you kind of see it come around. And again, it's part of love and trusting each other. So on the TD1 tax form, in the second page, the third bolded section down, second checkbox, it says, check this box if your total income for the year from all employers and payers will be less than your total claim on line 13. Your employer or payer will not deduct taxes from your earnings. I checked that box and was able to get income tax not taken off my paycheck. CPP and EI was still taken off. So thank you for that. I think it was Jason might have said that. So you can go to the chat box and look at that. So he had a way of kind of navigating through. Do you see that, Kevin?
No, I didn't see that one.
H.
Okay.
Hold it there, yeah. So cashless society, what the goal is, all money digital and controlled.
I should mention about dues. Do not ever hesitate to ask people for dues, because if you're serious, you'll fund something. People are serious enough to spend $20 on dinner, but they're not willing to pay dues for the cause to take back the nation. Hello? It's fine to ask for dues. It shows people's seriousness or not, right?
And what would you suggest for dues? What kind of a number?
Oh, I mean, it's being suggested anywhere like 2 to 5% of your monthly income minimum. There should be a minimum base that people, and then if you can pay more, fine. But, that's one figure that's being put out. Somebody asked, what do I think of internment camps? I'd say, which ones? I mean, you go into a reservation, that's an internment camp. You live in the cities today, those are internment camps. There's special legislation that's been on the books for years to set up these camps. I don't think they have need of them. There isn't enough people that are enough of a threat to start mass internment. They've also got people interned in the camp right here in their head. They've got the cop in their head telling them what to do all the time. They don't need to lock people up. And so I think some of those stories are put out deliberately by the opposition to get everyone scared that we're about to be gathered up. They don't need to do that. There's a lot of other means they do first. They get people to control themselves. It's much better. Then they don't have to look bad, right?
Chris says, can we issue tax receipts for corporate sponsorship?
If you want, but I don't think we should be sponsored by corporations.
No, I was thinking that. CRA owes them, won't pay it unless they do.
So we can't be sponsored by corporations. Not just we shouldn't, we can't be. Otherwise, we're just replicating the problem.
If there's any, questions, if you could put them in caps, that would be great. So we can kind of, if they stand out. 2 to 5% of business profit or sales in total. Is that your opinion? I think someone was asking, maybe that he was referring to membership.
I was referring to membership dues, yeah. It was suggested 2 to 5% of your monthly income.
Did anyone go to the bank and change their name on their account out of caps to man or woman? I guess that's a question for the group, maybe. Yeah. I don't know. Do you want to speak about that, caps? If somebody's new to the common law, caps versus.
You got to, if you want to operate in the system, like keep your pension, keep your health benefits, whatever, hold on to the corporate capitalized name. That's a fiction anyway. It's not you, and coexist with it. But then over here, your natural man or woman is operating as a free citizen of the republic, the common law assembly. So. Some people feel the need to say, screw you, I'm detaching. Well, then you have to bear the consequence of what might happen to you if you take that step. So think in terms of group action and alternative rather than personal defiance. Now, I'm not saying personal defiance is wonderful. We need that spirit. We need that fighting spirit, right? But you also have to be as wise as a serpent. Think of repercussions and, how to do it more effectively.
Brent's asking for your site and information. Thank you, Brent. Maybe you could give the radio show link or put the radio show link in the
I'll put all three here.
Murder by
There's the Republic.
Decree.
Here's the Sunday radio show. By the way, listen to the latest. Andrew and Shannon were brilliant on it, and I hope they come back. I hope more of you will be on the show. That's at Sundays, 6 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Atlantic.
So we're coming up close to the hour. Kevin, someone asked a question. Do you have terms we can use in court?
Terms
like words. There's certain words like understand and things that
right.
we can't use.
Yeah, they're working as part of. I'm working on a curriculum, citizenship school curriculum. And part of that curriculum that would be mandatory to teach people when they come on board with us is the meaning of words, the meaning of language, very important. So that's in the works. Yes.
Okay, good.
Good.
Any other questions? Sorry if it's the first time I join. I'm hearing we should empty our bank accounts. Oh, hi, Galaxy. Welcome. Yes, we're just saying that the banks are part of a larger corporate structure. And I don't know if you have a comment on that, Kevin. Maybe there's other places where your resources can be safer. In our assembly meeting on Friday, someone suggested our currency should be seeds, growing, planting seeds and love. And I thought, oh, I love that.
Well, yeah, definitely. I'm always one for pulling my money out of the bank to stick it away somewhere.
I hope that answers your question, Galaxy. I would take that course. That's the difference between legal and lawful. Or what's the difference? I guess he's asking. So did you want to explain that, Kevin? That's a good point.
It's got different levels. Generally, it means something legal is passed by government as a statute. Something lawful means it has to square with the natural law, with what's right, with which is what in our interests. So if a law doesn't deprive us of rights and we agree it, then it becomes lawful. But you can have something legal, like the Nazi regime was legal under its laws. Genocide in Canada was legal under the Indian Act, but it wasn't lawful. It didn't square with what's right. So that's kind of the general designation. There have been precedents in the U.S. Supreme Court saying just because something's a legal statute doesn't mean it's lawful, doesn't mean you have to go along with it if you don't consent. So that's kind of the general distinction we make.
So I'd just like to comment on that. In the document that you sent called the Banishment of Genocidal Churches from Canada, and anyone that had that email had this in a PDF. I called it The Queen is Corrupt. But you had between 1891 and 1996, a combined operation by the Vatican, British Crown, and Government of Canada, Catholic Church, Anglican United, killed over 60,000 Indigenous kids in so-called Indian residential school system. So every act defined as genocide under the United Nations and Convention on the Crime of Genocide occurred deliberately, systematically, and with malice. So, I mean, this is unbelievable when you talk about the crimes against church and state. And then Justin Trudeau admitted it, and he's still running free.
Well, again, it's an antiseptic word. I've talked to people who buried children who were electrocuted in electric chairs, sterilized, medical experiments, watched children. There was a eyewitness in Brantford who saw children lined up and shot by Canadian soldiers in 1944 at the Brandon Mohawk School. Anglican Church. I mean, it's horrible when you see it on the ground, and when you read murderbydecree.com and look at the links on my email, it's beyond belief, but it happened and it was covered up, and the people who did it are still getting benefits from thanks to your tax money, right? So anyway, and that was the only antidote to that is action in the interest of those children who died, right? The ones who are going to die if we don't stop it.
So that was under their laws were legal, but of course not lawful. So I think that's a good difference. Diane had asked the question, do you have a date for this? I think she was referring to this document of terminology. But how would Black Laws Dictionary, would that be something worth, I mean, we had it in a PDF that I sent out to the membership. Is that kind of a good reference for people who want to?
Yeah, Black's Law is a good overview. Now, in the back of our common law training manual, I also have a biography of some of the historical works on common law. Also, you should read a guy called Jeffrey Robinson. He's a lawyer in England who did a series of books about, one was called the Tyrannicide Brief, and was about the legal case that tried and executed King Charles in 1649 for conducting a war against the people in the English Civil War. And he makes a brilliant case for how monarchy is illegal and unlawful, and people have an inherent right to govern themselves. So he's a really good writer as well. So that's some examples.
Jeffrey Robinson, is that how you pronounce?
Yep.
Is he
Jeffrey,
still alive?
with a G.
Is he still alive?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Okay, thank you guys. Thank you. Everybody's thanking you for being here, and thank you. Are we free to invite people to this magical call? Yes, Brent, we have up to 100 seats. So yes, please do. Kevin, I don't see Christopher James as a problem so far. Can you expand on that, please? Maybe we shouldn't.
Oh, I've never met the fellow. People can say all sorts of things about me or against me, whatever. I just say, let's base it on evidence and not opinion or rumor. By the way, I got the name wrong. It's Jeffrey Robertson, not Robinson. Jeffrey Robertson.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah.
I like to comment on, because there's a lot of people that are writing about common law and doing common law workshops. But what I said last day is that I really value the work that you've done, Kevin, because you've put your work into your actions. I mean, your life demonstrates who you are. You've given up your reputation and your family and all this, not for your own personal situation, but for these kids, for these Indigenous kids. So I can't even talk about it because it kind of chokes me up. But, your work and your 25 years in writing and the 16 or 17 books that you've written and how you've came up against, the Pope and big players in the church and state, I think really highlights who you are and what you're doing in this movement. So anyone who's not endorsing your work, I don't think is serious about common law. And anyone who's, criticizing your work, I think is controlled opposition. So I think that, answers a lot of questions for me anyway. And having worked with you closely for the last few months and setting up the assembly, that's truly what I feel from my heart. And I'm supporting you, and our assembly is really valuing kind of the service that you've offered to us. So thank you.
Thank you.
Common sense meets natural law equals common law. Yes. Joanne, did you get to hear? Okay, but they are for Canadians. Crime Minister, who said that, Brent?
Prime Minister, I like it. Or Prime Sinister is another way.
Oh, that's great. Good. So we just have a few minutes. Any last questions? Time for a change in the people. That's right. We are the people. It doesn't take oh, I love this quote. Thanks, Linda, for putting it in. It doesn't take a majority to prevail, but an arrayed, tireless minority keen on setting brush fires in freedom. And I like to say in the hearts and minds of men and women, to kind of modify Sam Adams quote. And our children are next. I went through it, and they have changed the meaning of common law and what it means, says Diane. In the Black Law Dictionary, maybe she means. Version 2, Andrew says, is best. Black Law's Dictionary. You mustn't forget that fear is the enemy. That's it. Love trumps fear. Thanks for that, Carolyn. Our society has changed the meaning of the words as well. Good. We've got some links there. Thank you. People thanking. Any other questions? What advice can you give for people going through family court issues like custody or child support?
Oh God, avoid family court like the plague, because I've been there, and it's dehumanizing. It's designed to exacerbate pain and extend conflict so lawyers prosper. And it's far more destructive than if people just work it out themselves. And that's what common law does. It urges people to work out the differences and not go to court. So do not feed that system. It's a form of child abuse. The child abuse and trafficking and torture industry is very much tied into the family court. And in fact, the child predators operate in the family court system to see moms who are, or dads who are especially vulnerable. They target children for trafficking. You got to stay right out of that system at all, if at all possible.
Yeah, someone was asking about the Zooms, Carolyn or Galaxy, I think was. So every Wednesday we try to have these Zooms and every week they grow. So if you're interested in kind of being put on a list for Zooms, you can connect with me personally. And maybe somebody can pop my email in there, Dr. Dina, at Proton Mail or Gmail. And it will be uploaded to YouTube. So all the past Zooms, if you want to see the ones that we've done, are on our website. So if one of our members, maybe Linda, you could put our website up there and also my email address. And it's not, these Zooms are, you know, a platform for our republic, but it's a way kind of connecting you to assemblies or local people in your area. You know, we started here, Jason and myself, just as 2 meeting with Kevin, and then it grew to 4 and 6 and 8 and 10, and now it's 130. So it just, and that's within, you know, probably 6 weeks. So there's a real hunger and need for people to have a place to go where they feel safe and they feel heard. So again, if you start just, as Kevin said, with a cell of a couple of people, it builds, you know, and then have people that we can send to as people are approaching kind of Kevin at headquarters, or people kind of come in through the Zoom or whatever, we can direct them your way, and it builds your group locally. So these Zooms are a great kind of landing page, you know, for people across the country. We're doing wonderful work. Norm gave us a site for, I guess, Black Eds 2, said it was better. Okay, that's good. So any information you can post in there, anything important you want me to include in the link that I will upload, you can send it to me, Linda. Thank you. Or Charlene, put my email address in there. And oh, thanks, Ferdinand. That was the Blog Talk Radio show. Kevin, I don't think you've had a chance to see that yet. It was with Sally L. Cordy, and she was running for mayor in New York City. So she had done an interview with Ted and Rocco and myself today. So it was, again, a little embarrassing for me, but I spoke my mind.
Never be embarrassed about speaking your mind, sister.
I should have learned that right by now. You can call me delusional. I don't care.
You know
Frida says, thanks so much. Thank you guys for being here. Awesome. So we've had Charlene also posted our common. So this is an Atlantic Common Law website that we set up thanks to Anastasia and lots of our members. But it also has great information for the Republic too. So Republic of Canada, we've linked to that website as our mother. Oh, this is something that I want a clarification on. I kind of think as the assemblies as like our individual provinces or groups, and Canada as our country. Would you say that's a fair?
Yeah, that's a good rough analogy. But of course, within a district, you'd get common law assemblies forming district assemblies as well. And then at the next level, because considering the size of Canada, we'd need those district assemblies and eventually a national Congress. There's a real move, I should mention this, there's a real move over the next few months to set a date for a national constitutional convention, right? And that would be delegates from all the different assemblies coming together to form a constitution for a republic, what it would look like. And then we're off to the races. We've got a structure, we've got provisional government, if you like. And then that's going to be our protection, our counterweight to this madness, because it's only going to get worse. So that's something to keep in mind. People have we're thinking of January 30th, maybe a few months later. But anyway, that'll be talked about. That's another thing that'll be coming out very soon.
So as we close out, maybe you can just, again, verbally give your websites for somebody who might be listening.
Yep.
Kevin?
republicofcanada.ca, murderbydecree.com, and then the radio station or program on Sundays at 7 p.m. Atlantic, 3 p.m. Pacific is bbsradio.com/herewestand, one word.
That's great. And again, if you're trying to reach me, Dr. Dina, gc@gmail.com or Proton Mail. And my blog, healthtruth.blog, where I kind of put some information on masking, and some of the information that we put together, the Unmask package, kind of came from the research from that blog. So you can reach me through the blog, healthtruth.blog too. And again, Wednesdays we do this. Connect with Charlene, who's in the chat box. She's our administrator if you'd like to join. Connect with me if you'd like to join the Zoom. And I just want to thank you all for being here, because again, your questions really determines kind of this program and what we present. So, you know, we're stronger together, and appreciate all the feedback from across the country and the UK. Thank you for dropping in and sharing with us, because we're again, thank you, Paul. So I don't know if there's any final questions. Do you have anything to clue up with, Kevin?
Oh, just my email, angelfire101@protonmail.com. Also, somebody asked about the flags. The flag, the 3 stars, no, they're not pentagrams, they're actual stars. English, French, Indigenous founding nations is what they symbolize. And the blue lines is the Tuara Wampum Treaty, signed by our ancestors with the 6 nations that said we would share the land equally, go down the river side by side, not one over the other. So that's the philosophy of a confederation of sovereign nations within the Republic.
I'd like to comment on that, because I had said I met with a chief, right, a Mi'kmaq chief, one of the big chiefs in New Brunswick, and he had said that these chiefs that are set up under the Indian Act get money from the government, so they're like puppets for the government. But in 33 reserves across Atlantic Canada, these chiefs, Indian Act chiefs, get $1 billion. I said $1 billion.
Oh, yeah.
It's $1 billion, 400 million and 50. 400 million. So when I said $1 billion, he said, no, it's more than $1 billion. It's $1,450,000,000. And again, the people in the reserves are living in poverty. So
over half the reserves don't even have clean water.
I know.
I've seen these children dying from polluted water on over half the reserves in Canada.
Yeah, so Indigenous, French and English, yes.
That's right.
But the chiefs in New Brunswick want me to say Mi'kmaq. But they're on board with the 2. One other comment that I wanted to make from Linda, who's our educational director. We were having problems because on our website, people are just adding their email address. So we don't know where they've came from or what they've done. So we've set up kind of a little screening process that asks, you know, how they heard about us, where they came from. And Linda developed that question. I think I mentioned it earlier, Linda. I don't know if you were on, but, you know, where's your trespass been? Where's your pain in the old system? Because we believe, from our experience, those who have suffered the most under the tyranny, you know, have the greater fuel and enthusiasm for creating something new and different. So that helps solidify you as kind of one of us, as a sovereign mind and heart. And, you know, we love to hear your stories. So thanks for that, Linda.
I'm just putting on a final link, which is kind of a good intro to the whole issue. I'm putting it up right here. Will these, somebody asked, are these comments going to stay up?
They don't. When I record, it just records our voice. But if you want to, you want to copy and paste, keep it for your own private records, maybe. I think you can do that. Someone did that once before, so you might try to copy and paste it now, because once I sign out of the meeting, I think the comments are gone.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, I'll just let you know that I'm copying them anyways. I'm saving them.
Thanks. Okay, so you can, thank you. You can check with Charlene then, or Lex, and you can maybe put your email in there if somebody wants the chat links. You can connect with Lex. So thank you everyone for being here. It's been wonderful. We'll do it again next Wednesday at 7. You have our contact information if you need to reach us, and it will be uploaded onto Facebook. So have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thanks.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care, all of you.
Stop by me.
Stay strong.
Devin.
Yep.